I call this meeting to order. It is Wednesday, January 20th. I have 2001 up there. Isn't that great? That is pretty special.
2001. All right.
Yeah. I just
We're 2 decades behind here at work.
I know.
I don't want to live that again.
No.
Oh God, no.
And 2021 has been such an incredible year. Let me go back and change that one. Dear David.
We're only 20 days into 2021. It's been an incredible 20 days.
Yep. So, okay, Jesus. I just changed it on the agenda. I call this meeting to order. Except for Gil, everybody has seen the agenda. And Gil's working on it. If there are no objections, we will consider the agenda adopted.
All right.
Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. The December 2020 draft minutes were in the folder. They're my new style of just copy the agenda and turn it into the minutes and put notes on that. So it's easier for me to do. And so if anybody notices anything missing or interpreted wrong, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll consider those adopted. Hearing none, I will assume those are done.
Are we expecting anybody else to join?
Glenn is on, or Glenn and Dan. And I didn't send the notice out to the staff collective as a whole.
No, but I mean in terms of board, I'm just in terms of board members.
Eric texted me and said he will be 10 or 15 minutes late.
Okay.
I have not heard from Rosie, but
I heard from Rosie. She actually texted me and said there was a shooting outside of her house, and so she was involved with the police and stuff. She's okay. I don't know if for all those involved how they are, but she left a text and was like, "I'm okay. Just can you do the DI report?" I'm like, "Of course. I'm glad you're fine." You know.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Life is just so incredible. Thanks, Megan.
Yeah.
I have received no communications from the public. There have been no executive committee actions since the last meeting. Sorry. Committee and staff reports. Treasurers and Finance Committee report. And Marty, take it away.
Okay, we had the monthly Finance Committee meeting today. The bookkeeper's been especially busy with providing information for the reports that David has to submit. So we haven't, and also there have been some delays in what happens when money comes in to the station in December or pledges come in. It doesn't necessarily get paid in December. If a car gets donated, the money is the donation when it's sold. It could be sold 2 months later. That's then she has to go back in December and enter it as part of the debits. So because all the money hasn't come in from the fund drives and from other sources, she doesn't have the reports done. But we talked about it. There's at least $300,000 some dollars, more than that, in the checking account, which is the account where the daily expenses are paid from, insurance for the employees, salaries, all those kinds of things. That's a very healthy balance there. There's money in several savings accounts that, including the PPP money, which we're holding until it gets finalized. And also,
let me correct that, Marty. We're just holding on to that as reserves because we've spent the equivalent of that money on salaries. So it's not that we haven't spent the PPP money. It's just that put us in a good financial position.
So we're not, we asked her if there were any warning signs of problems to come that we should be aware of, financial problems that we'd have to deal with. And she said, no, she's very comfortable with what's going on. So I will submit a treasurer's report when the final December figures are sent to me. We didn't spend much time talking about the money because of her assurances, and we're satisfied with them. We did spend some time discussing the audit and Wagner CPAs, the company that does the audit for us. There are some questions about how they bill us and why they bill us. We are pretty sure as a committee that the amount we're billed is reasonable, and we're just going to ask for a little more information. One of the members wanted a little more specific information about it. So we have recommended we are recommending to the board that we engage Wagner CPAs as our accounting firm for the last year. So that, and basically that's our report. It was probably the shortest finance committee meeting we've had in some while. So, but we're happy with the financial direction. One other thing is, Susan told us that there are some really hurting not-for-profits in Madison right now. And we are not one of those. We're in good condition. But she's heard about others who are really having a hard time. She didn't have any specifics and we didn't ask her for specifics. But that's basically the report. I emailed a written report that covers those areas that I just spelled out to you. So that's kind of the finance committee report and the treasurer's report together. And when I actually put the numbers down on paper, I will email them to the board again. And they'll get placed in the folder.
I put them in the folder already for you, Marty. Thank you. And I added the link to the agenda. So if you click on that link, you get to that report. So thank you very much.
And that does add a motion to the floor.
It does. Thank you, Doug. So the question before us is to approve Wagner CPAs for the audit. Their proposal is the actual costs or $89.50, whichever is less. So it's not to exceed $89.50. The audit last year was $8,700. So this is up $250 for that. But there are additional, now everything's done remotely because of COVID-19. And so it takes more time. And so, and their salaries have gone up slightly. So that's why the increase. So.
Well, actually, that was the case last year. The audit was done remotely last year because by the time we had the audit, we were in lockdown.
But they didn't know that at the time they proposed it. So that's why.
Oh, that is true. That is true.
Yeah. So, so the question before us is to approve that. So all in favor say aye or raise their hand.
Aye.
All those opposed say no or give us a thumbs down. Kurt, I can't tell how you voted. You're muted and your camera is off. Well,
I vote yes.
Okay, it's unanimous from who's here. So very good. There was a programming committee report, but I don't recall any action items in there.
Kurt, Kurt's here, you could tell us if there is.
No, there's no action items.
No. Okay.
Yep. The Security Committee did not meet. Community Advisory Board did not meet. Technology and Facilities Director's report is in the folder.
Yeah, I have a question about that, actually. It was an excellent report. I really enjoyed reading it, Tom. So there was something about tables available.
They're yours.
I'm not sure I want both of them, but I can think of a use if we're really getting rid of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're incredibly heavy. That it's like impossible to haul to events.
Oh, okay. Wait a second. I thought these were just like folding tables I could come pick up.
I mean they're 8 feet long. One
Yeah,
of them,
no, I saw that.
one has a Formica top on it. They're heavy. So
They don't fold.
the legs fold, but that's it. I mean, there's something that you'd see in a church basement for a meatball supper is what you'd see.
Right. Well, I have a basement actually that I could put them in. All right. Well, we can talk about that later. Okay.
Tom, were there any action items in that?
Nope.
So, and Engineering Committee notes were also in the folder. And the highlights of that for me were the fiber optic connections have been made both at the transmitter and the
Right.
studio. And the new phone system equipment is almost done. Have they finally finished that, Tom?
Well,
Okay.
let me tell you a little story. When TDS got there to finish the connection from fiber to the phone system, that's when it was discovered there was a third switch owned by TDS up out of master control, and they have not configured nor scheduled that yet.
Okay.
So
But in terms of technology, the people at Hoyos Consulting has completed their connection upgrade. So now, if we could take it, they could give us a gigabit of connectivity from them, and then the TDS connection is 50 megabits. So WORT is really doing well in terms of connectivity and in terms of the reliability of that connectivity. So I'm real happy with that. That means that our stream can go out to 5 nines and our employees can get into their equipment. And so things are, and backups for Tom will be going faster and faster. So Tom is looking into getting a new switch that will allow us to go to a gigabit, but we haven't got the answer for that yet. But all in all, technology wise, I'm very happy. Financially wise, I'm very happy. WORT is really doing pretty good.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Did I have a momentary lapse into a coma and miss the Policies and Bylaws Committee report?
No, you didn't.
Because I think we've somehow skipped it.
Yeah.
We did. And that is David not keeping his place on the agenda. So we'll go back to that right after we finish technology, okay?
Okay, I thought we were. Okay.
My mistake. Any questions about technology before we go back to where we should have been? Hearing none. Policies and bylaws have changed the policy on committees, and there's a copy of the change in the folder. Stu, would you like to speak to that, please?
Well, Marla is going to make the report, but I just want to, after Marla, Marla, do you want to make the report?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Stu.
Okay.
Yeah, so at our last committee, we reviewed the policy on committees and identified a couple of changes. So we're asking the board to approve the changes that we are making. And as David said, they are in the document that we sent along. Does anybody want to discuss those?
And I want to, there's one change that isn't highlighted as a change. The actual text about the Policies and Bylaws Committee itself has some amendments which aren't reflected as amendments in the document there. We sort of just extended the language a little bit. I mean, nothing major, but that represents a change as well. But the other changes are as noted.
I don't have the document open in front of me. Was there any, we aren't asking for a change of the elections committee unless we decide that more board members want to be on the elections committee. Currently, no one has signed up on the document that you, Dave, put together in July for the committees. And the policy on committees says that the election committee is 3 people, including the secretary. And Doug and I are willing to be on the committee. So if no other board members want to sign up for it, we don't have to change anything regarding election in the policy on committees.
And the other thing about that committee is we specified that the volunteer and outreach coordinator be a designated member of the committee, since that job has great interface with the voting population at elections.
And Alita, that makes you by default a member of that committee.
Well, that was existing. That responsibility was existing.
Right.
Yeah, and then I joined the committee to help facilitate the transition of duties to the new volunteer and outreach coordinator for next year's election. Just so we have a through line of institutional memory, because it is somewhat of a complicated process. There's a lot of procedural things that you have to hit along the way. So I'm willing to help out in that respect, just because I've been through the process already.
Thank you.
And we also eliminated 3 committees that don't functionally exist anymore.
Which ones are those?
Regulatory compliance, public relations, and fundraising.
And it seems like, I don't know if those were ever officially removed by the 2/3 vote of the board. So we could either remove that sentence about removing the 2/3, needing a 2/3 vote to remove a committee, or you could take a vote to remove those 3 committees that haven't functioned in a long time.
So there's several things to do in terms of actions here, right?
Yes.
You want to guide us along, Stu?
Well, the simplest thing to do would be to move the amendments as proposed by the committee, which is amending the text of the Policies and Bylaws Committee, eliminating the 3 committees, and amending the text of the Election Committee, and see if that if that gets a 2/3 vote, that covers it.
And then the changes also have to be approved by the members. Is that correct?
No. This is not a bylaw. This is just
okay.
This is not a bylaw. This is just
Okay.
a policy.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that for me. Discussion. Hearing none. Do we need a motion, Stu?
It's the report of the committee, so no.
Okay. I'm going to call the question then. Are you ready to vote? Are there any objections to proceeding? All in favor of this change, say aye or raise your hand.
All right.
All opposed, say no or give me your thumbs down. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously.
And thanks to Glenn for noticing that those basic changes needed to be made and catching some of the other things as well.
And Doug too. I believe Doug
Yes,
noticed some of them too.
tipped me off to the fact that there is fundraising and regulatory compliance also were on there, so.
Just as an aside, a good friend of mine, Neil McLean, wrote a great pamphlet, or it was a multi-page document for cable TV for regulatory compliance. And it's surprising how many different agencies a cable television company has to comply with in terms of tower lighting and FCC reports and local reports and so on. And WORT is no different. So regulatory compliance for WORT, we should probably work up, Tom, you and I should probably work up a document that includes all those things to do. So we make sure we do them all. And there's, CPB and, well, so anyway, enough to make you sick.
Most of those are actually on Google Calendar.
Okay.
They've been, so we could round those up pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. But things change, so I want to make sure we stay on top of that. So.
Yep.
That's why we're here, Dave.
Thank you, Doug. Keep me honest, buddy. I think we are now to the point where at business and events report, Doug's report. You want to say a comment or two, Doug?
Sure. What a world of fun it's been this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say. Week started off pretty decent, but it's just getting more and more complicated now. As I don't know if everybody's read their email, but Suzanne is retiring at the end of the month. So we have to really move to hire a bookkeeper again. So I've dug up some materials today that we used in the last hire. So fortunately we have a good position description based on the last one. We've got the process down for the hire, but we do need to formulate a hiring committee. I
would also add that the personnel committee has to update the hiring guidelines document. So for Marla and Gil, we have a lot of work cut out for us there. But how many members of the board, Doug, should be on that hiring committee? 2?
Well, this is not a full hire, so it does not require the normal 6-person committee that the volunteer outreach coordinator will require. The last time we did it with 3, it was me and Dave and Marty. The 3 of us basically were the hiring committee last time for the bookkeeper position. Marty as treasurer, me as staff supervisor of the bookkeeper, and then you joined in as president.
Dan was on it last time, Doug.
Oh, and Dan was on that hiring committee last year too. It was the 4 of us. You're right, Glenn. Thank you. Because Dan at that point was our interim bookkeeper that had to do a lot of the transitional training for Suzanne when she started. It's going to be a little tricky because Suzanne her last day is the 29th of January. It is not likely that we are going to have a new bookkeeper by the 29th of January. We also have an impending audit in March. So fortunately, the bookkeeper position being a part-time position, it does not require the process of the full hire in the hiring guidelines. So the process can be done somewhat shorter, still respecting all of the EEO requirements and, getting notices out into those places so that we're definitely providing equal opportunity for people of color, people who are disabled, et cetera. We know how to do it because we just did it. So,
2 years ago.
So who wants to be on the hiring committee? We also have to discuss the hiring committee for Glenn's because that also needs 2 board members for the hire for the volunteer outreach coordinator hire.
Did we do that?
That one has a little more time involved because that process really won't need to start until March. This process needs to start immediately this week.
We didn't do it last month. Okay, thank you. So in regards to the hiring committee for the bookkeeper, rather than just automatically use the same people as the last hire, I want to make sure that everybody on the board has a chance to respond and volunteer if they wish to be involved. So board members, how do you feel? Anybody would like to be on this hiring committee? Don't all speak at once.
Well, I'll do it again if it's not actually part of my duties.
It's not, so we welcome you.
Automatically part of my duties.
And this time, compared to past hirings, the interviews won't be in person somewhere. So because of the magic of technology, so it'll be easier for people. They don't have to drive down to a community shares or wherever we hold, wherever we used to hold the interviews. So, any other board members wish to be involved in the hiring?
Doug, how much time do you think it'll be total in terms of hours to do that?
For this hire, I think it'll be a little less. We've already got a strategy for posting the position online and, you know, which services, hiring services to post. There's a lot of free ones that we used last time. And we have a lot of good connections that way. I think the majority of the work would be in reviewing the resumes that come in, and kind of just determining a pool of interviewees.
So do you think it'll be 5 hours total or 10 hours total in the next?
I would say, including the interview time, because I imagine we'd want to spend an hour with each at least. We try to whittle it down to maybe 3 to 5 interviews, depending on number of applicants we got. You know, like last time we had like 5 people that we really wanted to see. So that was about 5 hours of interview time. Then there's deliberation time that we'd want to deliberate after each, which is another half an hour. I'd say 7.5 there. So I would say 10 to 15 total from the beginning to the end of the process, maybe.
I will do that.
Yeah,
I'll
because
do
like
it.
the entire committee doesn't have to be involved with things like, you know, sending the offer letter. You know, we just have to do that by email and saying, okay, here's the language we want. Here's the offer we want to give.
I'll participate.
Marla, I appreciate your
Great.
offer to be on that committee. I am a little concerned about the hiring guidelines that ideally would be to the board by the February meeting for approval. So that's a big project.
I understand, and I'm pretty sure I can take both of them on.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Marla.
You're welcome, Gil.
Excellent. So, great. Now that we've got the 3 of us, I'll send out some information and a game plan tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. And thanks,
Yeah.
Glenn, for your concern.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other items for the business and events, Doug?
No, just that Dave and Suzanne and I have all talked about a game plan going forward during the transition, just to ensure that bills are paid, that AMDs are done twice a month, that payroll happens, that because there is going to be a bubble in between, and I'm going to be doing some training with Suzanne to fill in between, just to ensure that all the ins and outs are still happening. There may be a bubble in reports for February, simply because that'll be one of the tasks. A new bookkeeper coming in will be putting everything back into QuickBooks in order to run our reports for February. So I will be primarily working on day-to-day bookkeeping needs, not necessarily the monthly needs. Fortunately, we're in a financial position that will allow for this to happen so that, you know, we don't have to worry about the walls caving in. But, you know, I also want to ensure that we're not paying late fees on bills because they're not getting paid on time. I'm going to ensure that everything goes smoothly in between so that this transition can be as smooth as possible.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. The next report is the listener sponsor development report. That's Susan's report. I did not see any action items in that, but it's important that you all read that and understand that. Susan has actually joined us by phone. Susan, did you want to make any comments about your report?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself pretty quickly. You know, I think if you read it, Dave, my major concern is the new listeners and the fact that, you know, as we added them this past year, I checked about 200 of them for age, and we're not really adding younger donors at all.
I'm glad you reported that because I wanted to emphasize that to the board. That's a pretty important need for us as we continue to go through time. Our donors are getting old, and we're not bringing in enough new young listeners and donors to replace them. So we need everybody thinking about this and working on how to make sure that we present well and attract donors in the younger age demographic. So
it was one of the reasons why I had hoped to do something with Arbitron, because if the problem is that we have young listeners but not young donors, that's one problem. If we don't have young listeners, which would explain not having young donors as well, that's a totally separate problem.
Susan, one of the comments that I heard from staff is the concern about the cost of Arbitron, and I understand that.
If I can get a major donor to pay for it, then that wouldn't be a concern, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's thank you for that. That's exactly what I was leading up to. So.
Yes, we're thinking the same path, Dave.
Yep. Thank you. And Shally is not with us on this meeting tonight, but Shally's been working a lot on the social media. The social media committee working group has been working on that. But young people today use devices and social media, and many young people do not own radios. My grandson doesn't own a radio. I haven't been able to solve that problem yet, but he spends all of his money on computers and.
I am one.
Okay.
What, you're a young donor?
No, buy him a radio.
Buy him. I thought you said I am one.
Yeah.
Like, you're a young listener.
I've actually got an old boombox in the attic that we haven't used in a while, so that may go out to grandson's house real soon.
Can I just say that, I mean, I think lots of 13 to 26, 27-year-olds listen to music on a variety of different mediums, like whether it's like live streaming or whatever it is. I just think the programming, like I love WORT, right? I love all the programming. I think it's amazing, but I see a pocket that's missing.
Mm-hmm.
I see a pocket of music that's missing. Like, yeah, we have like late night hip hop, which is very like, urban street, Chicago sort of like based. But there's a whole set of music that's missing from WORT. There's sort of like that socially conscious, like hip hop, that underground sort of, that draws a whole lot of people who might not listen to like top 40 radio. It's the same people that come to UW-Madison to play shows, when the world was still open.
Sure.
Like the Chance the Rappers, there's something about WORT. There's a young vibe that's missing. Like I've always kind of felt like that. Like, okay, I love like old school. I love R&B. I love the throwbacks. I love the country. But there's a whole subsection of like, I don't know if there's a show that you need to have, or you need to bring in like 20-something-year-olds that are very like the skateboard type of, there's something missing.
Alita, we need your help with that.
I would agree with you, Alita.
I'm 52. I mean, you know what I mean? But I'm like, my ear is to that stuff. And I love to listen to that kind of stuff, but that thing is missing. Yeah, Marla, I mean, you understand what I'm saying. Like there's dope, like music that's considered underground, but it's not really underground. It's like very aggressive. And I mean, Chicago is not that far away. Detroit is not that far away. People will come, they'll do stuff, but that, like, I love the grimy, like Chicago element, you know, that midnight stuff. That's real hard. That's like, you know, the drug dealer, like street, like thug type. That's great. But there's a whole subset of stuff that's missing. And those are the young people that might not have like a lot of expendable cash, but they will expend their cash where they feel their heart is. So I kind of feel like we have to like go for that. Maybe make a connection to UW, you know, maybe, what's that? The stuff they do out there, maybe like make a connection, because they have a radio station, but there's not enough spots for those folks to do what they want to do.
Yeah, and they've got a whole hip hop program there. They've got some great,
right?
You got great programming.
Alita?
Yeah.
I'm on a programming committee. I think you make some good points, and perhaps you should talk to Sybil, or we can get it on the agenda for the next programming committee meeting.
Okay. I just see like this big wide open like opportunity, and I think that you would get a whole lot of listeners who like, oh, I'm in my car, I'm running from here to there. Oh, there's this event happening. Oh, I'm gonna go here. I can win tickets. I can go, you know, whatever. When the world opens up again, like I think like there's so much stuff going on underground that's not really underground, but we're not tapped into it. I mean, I love everything we do, but it's like there's something missing.
Yeah.
When I first joined the board, it was at this point. I remember Stu saying, we have this existential crisis of who we are, and somebody said at that meeting, "Oh, is our programming okay?" And this, I think, it was my first meeting, and people were like, "Yeah, our programming's okay." And with Alita, I think our programming is great. I think our news is great. But it does need to be, I really do believe it needs to be reviewed and to be freshened up.
Well, some of the music that I listen to, like I don't hear. Like some of the stuff that I like to listen to, even like classical music, like the classical music station, like I'm really tapped into like social justice and hearing like Chevalier and like all sorts of like, you know, a mixture of stuff. And I think we kind of have to push people to be like, let's get out of what you think is diversified and like worldview and like do something completely different. Like, I know the classical music station happened, but my friends from Milwaukee, Sister Strings, I brought them in on Sunday to the show on Sunday because he didn't even think about programming that. You know what I mean? Like, how do you not think, like, I think, like, intentionally, we have to think about being diverse because that's important, right? Like, it has to be an intentional thing.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh, hey, there's a lot of dope shit out here.
Your words are important. So please keep talking to Kurt and to Sybil. And we should have another all station meeting in 2021, and we're already on the 20th of January. So I will start.
I mean, I would do a show, but I don't think I have enough hours in my, I just don't. I'm trying to recover.
Yeah.
Alita, I mean, I would love to do a show, but it would have to be like once a month.
Do you have contacts in music in the other Madison schools that we could start to find students who would be willing to do programming?
Dave. Yes.
Yeah, and I would be happy to come in to like oversee, like if there was like high school students coming in just for like safety and teacher reasons, I would be happy to do that. I just don't think I can like be the driving force behind saying, let me put it together.
Excuse me, I'm a little leery about the board doing programming decisions.
Right.
I think we're just talking.
Okay, yeah, but I heard we were on the verge of action items.
No, we're saying to talk to Kurt and to Sybil and work that way.
Yeah.
I think it's about what we send to the programming committee. And I've had this thought at the back of my head for a long time, where I worry that the way WORT interacts with hip hop is dangerously close to tokenism, where, oh, look, we have our hip hop show, see? But there is incredible diversity among hip hop around this whole country and
right.
You know, with different groups. Like Alita just mentioned Chance the Rapper, and he's big and he's mainstream. We don't need to play Chance the Rapper, but we need to play the next Chance the Rapper, right? Like when I was in college, you know, Talib Kweli was at the point where Chance is now, where he was mainstream enough that he came to campus and it was a huge thing. But it was years before that KEXP was playing him, you know, and that was probably the only place you had heard it in the Seattle airwaves.
Yeah.
Other than maybe a few dedicated hip hop stations that had pretty diverse categories, not just, you know, top 40. Whatever. I mean, this goes back to the 90s where it was a lot more gangster stuff, and you know, Black Star was revolutionary. Or not, what was their name? I should know. I'm totally brain farting. But the point is, like, we need to be, you know, I think having something that's student led. So maybe our recommendation to the programming committee should be looking for students, people from UW, other young people, and to host that. I think the other question is too. Somebody mentioned Sybil, and I think a music show is really important. But what drove me as a young person to WORT is that when I moved to Madison, this radio station was part of the culture of this city. That was the culture of why I decided to come here. As a, you know, my wife and I both have our graduate degrees. We are some, you know, privileged white folks. We came here largely because she had a job at Epic. I had, you know, I can relocate as an attorney. I had my biggest client in Chicago at the time. But why make Madison home and not live an hour outside of Madison or whatever? It was because of the war, right? It was because of these sorts of things. And if we're stuck in what was in the 80s or whatever, or the 90s, you know, we do become stagnant. So I think having that different show, and I think there's something potentially both for the programming committee and I think for staff. I think with the programming committee, we would say, hey, look, go get us another music show, or look at what different music shows would look like, right? However that process is done. But I can't help but think that something that might even relate back to the news function of WORT makes sense as well, where we're playing this music and then we have an interview with the artist. That's what made KEXP a killer radio station. I'm trying to remember, is it KEXW out of St. Louis? I think was one I listened to a lot. And that was something they did. And I don't think we're engaging, you know, in that way. We're engaging in some very real, authentic ways. I mean, I can now tell you, it's funny, as a criminal defense lawyer, I've gotten cred now with an inmate before for being a WRT board member, right? That gave me some common ground with the client once because he listens to Boss Lady. But there's more to hip hop than just that, right? And if we're talking about bringing the next generation of people, that's one thing that could be, you know, possible.
I'd like to bring this to a close.
Well, no, I need to say something important. I just heard Eric say that the board should tell the programming committee X, Y, and Z. That is not the board's relationship to the programming committee. That is why there's a programming committee. Board members are not to have any role in programming decisions. That's what the programming committee is for. And I'm really uneasy with.
Does that mean we can't make suggestions? I mean, I understand that you're saying we can't make decisions, but we can't make a suggestion.
We should do it individually. Like if you have an idea for programming, you should present it to the programming committee as an individual.
No, I think this is appropriate.
Or even a group of
what
individuals.
I can do is,
Kurt says what?
On the next programming committee agenda, I will put this item, and if Alita wants to participate in that, that's fine. And then we can look at it and then come back to the board.
Well, you know, I kind of feel like a lot of this is associated with social justice, you know, as well, like how we look at what we're doing. I mean, you know, Madison has a skate park, right, in the middle of the city. Is anybody going over there and talking to those people that are a part of that culture and asking them like what's going on? This is a news story. This is a cultural shift, right? It's a cultural shift because we belong to a certain age, right? We belong to punk rock or like a hippie or whatever it is. But my question is, I believe in holding open the door, kicking open the door and keeping it open and saying, come in. Like you should be able to come in and, you know, let me just help you a little bit, give you opportunity. And I just see that that's a big missing portion. You know, I view it through a different lens. I'm the only Black person on this board, right? So I view it through a different urban lens. So I'm just saying, like we keep saying that people like your base, right? Your base like is getting older. Who says that your older base is not going to love this and still give money? Like we have assumptions. We have, right, Glenn and Dan, we have assumptions, right? That because we bring this in, that people will be like, oh no, you don't know that. You don't know that, right? But we get stuck in the same old mindset. And maybe because I'm dealing with teenagers every day, you know, and because they're like, hey, do you know this? Have you seen this? Have you? And I'm like, yeah, okay. You know, I just think we should expand and open up a little bit, not because we're all about business, right? Like we want to keep our kids safe, but we need to expand like our thought process and our boundaries for what is and what isn't like dope, you know?
Thank you. Thank you for your input and please continue to do that. And please talk to the program committee and
thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Alita.
Thanks, Alita.
Yeah.
So I think two things. One, I would disagree functionally with Stu. I mean, the board establishes WORT's overall goals, priorities, and policies. The most recent programming committee is established under 2018 rules that say they shall develop and recommend to the board a process to review the programming schedule and evaluate program posts. Like I understand that functionally what you're saying is how it's been done, and I'm not trying to interrupt or kind of betray that process. And I sort of threw a line in there that maybe got lost in the interpersonal gap of, or whatever that process looks like, right? I think I said something like that. Said, you know, maybe we tell them to do a show or whatever that process looks like. But to me, I think the other thing that if we're talking about this show directly out of the conversation where we're talking about not reaching the next generation, right? And it's not just reaching a certain diverse element of the next generation, it's the next generation at all. You know, this is a good starting place. But I think the other question too, that, you know, maybe goes beyond the personnel committee, and this is where it maybe goes to staff and it goes to both music and news, is, you know, this may be something that we're trying to put more in an online format, so that people can grab it as a pod and listen to it on their phone. Because I mean, as a young person, I kind of think of myself as like the old fart of the millennials, and yet I'm listening to a lot more pods than radio. Right? Radio is strictly pretty much in my car, or if there's a particular program I'm looking to listen to, sure, like, you know, I'll sometimes tune my radio or just as often my computer to the online, you know, WRT feed if I want to listen to, you know, All Motor's show, right? I'm pretty religious on that one, but the like the idea that we're, just going to do a radio slot and that's going to get us a bunch of young people and they're going to listen different times, have different schedules. So it probably needs to be more than just, oh, hey, let's set up a host and let's have a program and all that, which would be a task that the program committee would do. I think this is bigger than that. This is a, hey, we need to talk to our news person, our news staff member, our music staff member, and say, can we get shows or podcasts, something that is in a digital format? Maybe it plays over What's Airwaves at some point, but then it also should be in an online format that's easily accessible, maybe through mediums outside our own. So this is an evangelical program for us in terms of getting young people on the station. We've got interviews side by side with the music of the people that we really like. That's when I look at the most successful community radio stations nationally, that's a feature that they've done with their music.
I agree, and I think that goes through programming, and please channel that, and we can move on. Any other comments? This is still the listener-sponsored development report, so I'd like to bring that to a close and go on to the music director report. Are we comfortable moving on? Hearing no objections. The big action item from the music department is approve computer for Sybil to work from home. Your email box has been full of the discussions that have been taking place just before the meeting about that. And so the current state of that issue is that technologically, Tom Jones can put together a computer with parts that we have, with donated computers that are pretty decent, and get that to Sybil's house. But the question is a WORT-owned computer at a staff house. And that has elicited lots of questions. One of the questions that Susan has brought up is the question of the IRS implications of an employee using a work-owned computer. And Susan, did you want to talk a little bit about that? Are you proposing, Susan, that we should not provide a WRT-owned computer to staff, or we should do it in a certain way?
I'm proposing that you let the staff discuss this and consider some of what we might need to have to set up, whether we believe that providing a computer during the pandemic when we're already providing things to volunteers. I just think that this should have been a staff discussion, and three of us, Shali, Tom, and I, have no memory of ever discussing this in a staff meeting. It's not in our staff notes. Tom said had it been anything discussed, he would have said, we have the stuff right here to do it. I just would like the staff to have a crack at talking about this before it moves to the board level. It's something we've always done in the past when someone's brought up something that we need that might not be in the budget. We discuss it as a staff first. So I'm not clear on why it's jumped to board level without a staff discussion.
I agree that it could have further staff discussion, but we did discuss it briefly when Sybil was having so many problems with her internet last week's staff meeting. It was toward the beginning of the meeting, and we started discussing her and Aaron both having computers that would rip shows better because of the amount of time it was taking for them to complete the shows and insert the spots and then resave the show. And it was a brief conversation, but we were all kind of in a agreement that that was something that was needed so that they could do their jobs more efficiently. It didn't make it into the notes because it was not an official item, but we did have that discussion.
Doug, do you have any problem with this starting back at the staff level, for
No,
further
not
discussion.
whatsoever. Yeah, no, not whatsoever. I'm totally fine kicking it
That's
back
all I'm asking.
and talking
Yes.
about it some more, because we didn't really make any sort of formal decision. It was just something that we talked about, and we all seemed kind of in agreement. Like, it was a jump for that to go to the board report, but like there didn't seem to be any dissension at that point about the idea. I think that's why it happened.
So I think just letting this go back to staff, and if it rises to a decision where we feel like the board needs to step in, then that can happen. But I think it's premature at this point to involve the board, and it's outside of our usual practice.
Well, and my question is, if it's something that staff decides that is needed on an urgent basis, is this something that we could have the executive committee sign off on until the February meeting when it could be ratified by the full board? That might be also another option to take to expedite it.
Executive committee can do anything the board can do.
Right.
And Tom's already indicated that he's got the stuff here. He said today all the stuff is here. It's not a question of maybe he has the stuff or he has to get anything additional. It's all here. So there isn't even a need for a $300, there's nothing that's going to cost $300 or more that makes it a board decision.
I'm not saying this is a board decision because of $300. I'm saying it's a board decision because having WORT computers at home has not been officially authorized in the past. If the board authorizes staff to have computers at home, but does not mandate that the staff have computers at home, then the staff can discuss and figure out how they want to do this, but the board has already said, yes, you may proceed on that basis. Is that okay?
Well, funny thing is, I've had a WORT laptop sitting on my kitchen table for the past 10 months.
I understand.
Because it's allowed me to work at home. Like, I don't take it back and forth because that's a higher risk of damage to the laptop, and no one else needs it right now.
I just want to have on the record for the WORT board that the board says it's okay to have WORT computers at home, and then the staff can figure out how they want to do it.
Why do you think the board needs to authorize that?
So that there are no fiduciary questions later asking when that was authorized. Do you see a negative problem with the board saying it's okay to do something?
If it's not necessary, I do.
Why?
Because once you start doing unnecessary actions, you tend to drift from the purpose of the board. Authorizing, for instance, me to be able to sign a document saying the information I provide is correct, suggesting that every year that has to happen instead of saying it's part of your board description, you're starting to get into the nitty-gritty of day-to-day job stuff.
That's not the issue before us right now.
Yeah, as the body responsible for WORT's as the body responsible for the assets of WORT, it doesn't seem to me to be improper for us to say staff members can take board assets, station assets home to do station business. That doesn't seem to be, that seems reasonable to me.
Did you authorize the volunteers receiving stuff at home?
Yes, because we accepted the staff reports that said it was happening.
And approved
So
the
if we
budget
say-
expense for the items that
Approve
were
the budget
purchased.
items, yes. Yes, we did.
Susan, I think the clear thing is this is not, I don't think this is day-to-day. This is rules, policies, and guidelines. That's the charge of the board, rules, policies, and guidelines. And we're saying, yeah, taking IT stuff home, totally in the green light, making sure that it's not a question, so that nobody can, I think Dave put it so kind of, but so that it can't become an issue or a liability for a staff member or anybody later, right? Board is officially saying it's okay, so then maybe it's just a little peace of mind there. But that's it.
Now, we've potentially got a question. Is it only for the duration of the pandemic? Is it only until the station is open to volunteers? Is it indefinitely because they need to have 24/7 capability? I mean, I'd be willing to make the motion to authorize, in this instance, Sybil to use a WORT-created computer at home for her music director responsibilities. I don't know when that would end. But I think the basic authorization is legitimate and reasonable.
I think if we could even say, I would just as soon say on record, we have a position on the staff, even more potentially than the whole staff, to the extent that the expense level doesn't rise. Like, there is a person that's responsible for managing and probably tracking these items, and that's Tom. I mean, that he's in charge of the equipment and the technology at Ward. If this is Ward's property going somewhere else, that probably falls under his job description already, even without any modification. I don't know if you would disagree with that, Tom. I think you're yeah.
Well, I would agree with it.
Right.
Susan, let me give you an alternative.
Tom agrees totally. It's in the chat.
Would it be more palatable to you if we put this in the job description rather than just as a board motion?
Who is the you you're talking to?
Susan.
Ah, okay. I can't see you, so I don't know what you're referencing. I think you saw from my notes, a bunch of us have already recently purchased computers to do stuff that our computers were incapable of, to do that from home.
And I'm sorry that we didn't discuss this issue before you made that purchase. That doesn't change the fact that we need to discuss it now.
My question is, because I need something in order to do my job at home, does that mean that WORT must necessarily provide it?
I'm not saying must, but WORT wants to.
And I guess I'm being, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Susan, go ahead.
I think that's a larger discussion than just, at what right now we have the equipment to supply Sybil without any problem from stuff we have here. But if I want to say I'm only going to use my computer at home for my stuff at home, and anytime I need anything else, I expect WORT to supply me with a computer, right? Because I don't need to buy Office for Mac. There's nothing in my personal life that requires that. But I do create spreadsheets and stuff at home. So shouldn't WORT consider supplying me with that?
Yes.
I don't believe that every time we come up with something that it's reasonable for WORT to say, especially when you can come into the office and do it, nothing is stopping you from coming in here and doing.
There's a pandemic going on right now, immediately, but secondarily, people do their work all hours now. That's the new way of working.
Well, wait. There's a difference between the job hours of the music and the news directors who have operational requirements regarding on-air activities and other staff. I don't think that Susan needs to do her job or be ready to do spreadsheets at 2 a.m, whereas, if something goes wrong.
Tom,
operationally with on-air stuff, Sybil or Shali might. I mean, I think there's a difference.
Or Aaron, or Tom, or Jonah, or there's a whole list of people that you're starting to get into. And I just want to keep going back to, as somebody who, you know, is working hard to bring in a lot of money to WORT, I want us to be a little more thoughtful about saying, you need it, we buy it.
Yeah, but right now we're talking about something that doesn't cost any money. That's what we're talking about right now, is whether, I mean, the question before the body right now is whether to authorize Tom to put together existing WORT equipment into a computer that Sybil can take home and use for X period of time. That is the immediate issue. The issues of—
Stu, if you want to draw it that narrowly, I'm fine with it.
I mean, the issue of how far that extends and what it really means for other staff and new computers is a different question that should go through a thorough staff discussion before it comes to the board. But the question before the board right now is, given the current pandemic, given the current situation of Sybil's inability to do her job fully based on the computer she has, do we authorize Tom to put together a piece of equipment for her to take home for X period of time? And I would make that motion.
I would, and I would be in total agreement with it. You are the first one to phrase it that narrowly.
I'm a narrow-minded man. What can I say?
I didn't mean that. I'm
well,
just saying, if we can stick to that narrow, great.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with this kind of thing.
I'm sorry, Lita, what'd you say? I missed the—
Is there a motion to be made? What are we doing?
I made that motion.
Okay. Can I second the motion?
Be happy to have you do so.
Here we go. There you go.
Now that leaves undetermined what that time period is, because I'm ambivalent on whether or not it's for the duration of the pandemic until volunteers are ready to come back in, or open-ended. But I think, you know, the immediate issue is, I mean, certainly at least for the duration until the station is open. I mean, that's at least the baseline.
Because we've never been in a global pandemic before. So, right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I seconded it.
And you might want to retroactively allow Doug to have a laptop at home as well.
Well, that's—
He's covered.
No, you don't. I just stole it, so it's fine.
Right. Okay, here we go.
Stand by, everybody.
Stand by. Erase that.
Stu,
yeah, that's where I'm at.
Can you give me the wording of your proposal again, your motion?
Oh gosh.
Well, first, let me ask Tom, let me get the predicate. Tom, do you have the equipment and material on hand to put together the computer that Sybil is looking for?
Yes.
Okay, then the motion is to authorize Sybil to use a WORT generated computer at home to perform her music director duties for the duration of the pandemic.
Yeah. I use my MMSD computer and I don't ask them permission. I'm just saying.
I worked at the university for 23 years and had
I'm on my work computer right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I would get on the network at 2 a.m. to fix the network when it broke, or to monitor the network.
Right. And I have an Apple desktop and a laptop, Apple desktop, laptop. I don't use either one of those. I use my work computer.
Stand by, Alita. Eric?
Just so that we can keep moving, Stu, would you consider a friendly amendment to that? Because we've got Doug's laptop at issue here, and then we've got, even though it's not part of this report, and Aaron's, potentially needing one as well. Would you entertain a friendly amendment to that? That upon, a decision by the overall staff that a staff member needs equipment at home, and with approval from the facilities director, that you know, the WORT staff be authorized to work as necessary to I forget what your word, procure the equipment.
I'll just extend the motion to include Aaron in the Tom generated and Doug, and to authorize Doug's use of the ward-owned laptop.
I think I'm trying to say it should be systematic of, if the staff is in agreement that this needs to happen and the technology director approves, then we should allow it. Because I think Susan's concern is we don't just want an automatic flow of this stuff. And we also don't want to be managing the day-to-day of saying who gets what computer. So that's giving the staff the authority to collectively decide this, and then also requiring approval from the technology director, who's going to be the person whose real department that is.
Well, right, and then Tom also will have the documentation to retrieve the equipment, right, in case the person retires, quits, or gets hit by a bus. Or wins the lottery and says, "Screw you people."
Hit by a
Eric, you want Eric, as you formulated it, it sounds to me like the facilities director had veto power over the staff authorization.
Can I read what I got so far? Authorize staff to use a WORT computer at home for the duration of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, but Eric was talking about a more generalized authorization to the staff collective to make that decision to authorize, but then it was also subject to some decision by the facilities director.
Right. Well, I would be satisfied with what Dave wrote, because I'm a little confused as to whether, if we're approving for specific people, if that's running into an issue with Susan where we're getting into the day-to-day of telling the specific people, you know, what computer they can and can't use, when really it just should be a policy, should be a guideline. And I trust the staff to make these decisions. Susan's on the staff, she's part of the collective. She's going to bring that listener sponsor development director perspective of, hey, we got to be cognizant of dollars in, dollars out here. You know, Doug's a business guy, he's going to have the same, a lot of the same approach. So I would think that would, you know, okay, what so Dave said, I think is sort of automatically understood too.
Okay, so state your motion.
Let me repeat what Dave just a minute, but I want to hear Tom's question.
It's not really, it's more of a, can we simplify this? I mean, when Doug took the laptop home, and because I had given Aaron the system that it was kind of flaky, so it didn't really pan out, but I always went with whatever we needed to do to give the staff the tools to stay on the air was what we should do. And if it was over $300, then we would come for approval or have it in the budget. I mean, has it really changed?
So let me read the what I have collected so far. Authorize staff collective to approve staff to use a WORT computer at home for the duration of the pandemic. And why to do this? The reason to do this is to make sure that the board doesn't say, "Hey, you lost the computer, you have to pay for it." I'm trying to make sure that the board has approved this so that we don't have a liability issue. Not to force anybody to do anything.
Well, okay. You know, somebody's got to have liability and responsibility. I mean, if staff authorizes Doug to take $1,000 laptop home and he drops it on the floor, who else is going to be responsible for it?
It ain't no $1,000 laptop.
Well, it's someday it will be. No, but I mean, Dave, I don't understand your point about. I don't understand the point you just made.
I think that the liability belongs to WORT, but that's a different issue.
Well, negligence is one thing, a house burning down or theft is something else.
I don't want to get into that now. It's getting too messy. I just want the board.
Maybe legally they're not, but they are different things.
Yep.
Well, these are things that the staff could talk about, protocols and policies, and setting things up with Tom about identifying equipment and recording things. if you guys want to do some kind of authorization for the Sybil's, Aaron's, and Doug's stuff, and let the staff revisit exactly how that would be implemented, and the liability that would, I see the liability as being with the person that has the stuff under their control. But that's something the staff should talk about, I think.
So the current motion is authorize staff collective to approve staff to use a WORT computer at home for the duration of the pandemic.
Maybe you should change that to not just like a staff computer, right?
Uh-huh.
But like resources. So it covers everything, right? So what if a staff takes home some other stuff that's not a computer and they're going to use it, right?
Yep.
To cover all of it. Because it's not just about like a computer, right? It's about like if you take something that's, huh?
I asked Stu if he'd accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I'm okay with, I don't know what the precise language is. I'm okay with the general authorization that as Eric suggested.
I'll read the current motion as amended. Authorize staff collective to approve staff to use WORT resources at home for the duration of the pandemic.
There we go.
Fine.
I like that. Yeah, I'm good with that.
I would like the facilities director to include the authorizations in his report, so that the board is aware of how this is being utilized.
Okay.
That seem reasonable to people?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think we need this in the motion, though. I think that can just be part of Tom's report. Or do you want it in the motion?
Either the minutes or the motion, as long as it's in the minutes.
I think it should be a part of the motion because that can include a lot of things. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, and that the facilities director report its utilization of this authorization.
Right.
You know that to do that, I'm gonna have to have a WORT computer at home to be able to do this late at night.
That can be arranged, right?
We'll give you a Sharpie. You can there's a surplus of Sharpies.
There we go.
Beautiful.
And an interactive whiteboard, because we can do that.
Oh,
There you go.
cocktail.
Yep. Yes. Hello.
So now the motion is authorize staff collective to approve staff to use WORT resources at home for the duration of the pandemic. Technology director to include these allocations in the monthly reports or board reports. Let's do it that way.
I like that. Because that includes the country show, right? The Rockin' John show. That includes like all of that.
No, that uses staff. That does not volunteers. That's a different question.
Oh, my bad. Okay, my bad.
And I don't want to blow up the meeting by putting volunteers in this motion also.
Really? Because
We'd be
maybe
going to 2022 if we did that. So
okay, bad. Okay, baby steps. Okay,
yeah, baby steps.
baby steps.
So, any further discussion about the motion before us? Hearing none, all in favor, give me a thumbs up or an aye.
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 All opposed, say no or thumbs down. Motion carries.
Whoop, whoop.
Thank you, everybody. Aaron filed a music assistant report, which was very fun. But there were no action items that I could find, so I'm not going to go into that. News, talk, and public affairs report. Shalley's reports are excellent. She also includes a link to find out how many, the Google Analytics for how many people are looking at our stuff, and that's always valuable. So I recommend that you read her reports. They're great. Next is the volunteer outreach report.
Before I leave that, I just want to say that it was really nice that Shali and Sybil worked together on having some special programming that preempted some of the music programming for public affairs activities. That was a very nice way for staff and volunteers to all work together for some special news and public affairs programming.
Agreed. Okay. Volunteer and outreach report, Glenn's report. Well, Glenn, do you want to address the questions? They're in the agenda.
Okay, the first one is to review and finalize the updated position description for the volunteer and outreach coordinator provided by the staff collective.
And is that something that you want the board to do?
Yes, the board should finalize job descriptions. That's why I sent it out in advance with my report. I'd wanted people to review it, and it was an action item too.
Oops. Not. Oh, there we go.
The position description, though, was not in the in that report.
It was in the board folder, and I indicated that it would be in the board folder.
Okay,
It was in Glenn's email from Friday.
Yeah. I'm fairly certain I uploaded it to the folder.
You did. You did, and I didn't address that.
I just want to be able to not be able to move on the hire if we don't have an approved job description.
I, for one, have not been through that job description at all, so I can't make recommendations at this time.
I think if we formulate the committee, we could finalize the job description as late as the February meeting. But that would be the absolute latest deadline we could have, because at that point, we're going to need to start talking about posting the hire and recruiting.
I was hoping that we might be able to actually start getting the job description out there by February 1st, but we need to have an approved job description for that. So,
yeah, I don't know that that's going to be feasible at this point, but I think 2 weeks isn't a long time to wait. I mean, you know what I mean? Because the whole process is an 8-week process. So like if we start the process by the end of February, we're still looking at the end of April at a hire, which is more than enough time.
Right. He's right.
yeah. Okay.
And Glenn, do you think it would be possible to have in the interim to publish a preliminary, like just the summary of what the activities are, to give people a sense and indicate that the full details would be forthcoming shortly, or
Possibly. I mean, we're going to need to, other action items for today are to figure out who the 2 board members are on the committee. So then it's Doug and I and the 2 board members. Then we will start looking for the volunteer members. So we can get that done by the end of January. And simultaneously by the February meeting, I'm hoping that we have finalized updates of the hiring guidelines manual. So all those are pieces that would like to be, I'll take your suggestion. We might not be able to move on it quicker than the February board meeting anyhow, but maybe we can, I'll talk to Tom because he put the ads in for the last hire, and I don't know if some of them have certain times that are better to submit them or if they're like ongoing job boards or whatever. So I can check with Tom and we can discuss it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we can certainly say that WORT is seeking a new volunteer and outreach coordinator responsible for identifying, organizing, and placing volunteers in positions at WORT to support the ongoing work of the station through outreach and program promotion support, fundraising support, volunteer staffing, and volunteer management. I mean, we have, you know, a general statement of what the position is that we can publicize at this point that is not going to change as we decide, okay, is this 5% or is this 10%? So I think we know enough about the position that we can make generalized statements about it.
What I'd like to propose is that we turn that RTF file into a Google document and then charge the board with reviewing that document and making comments and have responses due by a date soon.
The board or the personnel committee?
The board needs to.
Well, the board needs to approve it, but do you want the board taking the laboring oar to do it, or to collectively all do the, okay.
That was the process. Molly brought her job description to the board and the board just passed it. I mean, I thought I had done my due diligence with providing it in my report and identifying it as an action item. And somehow there was a disconnect that people didn't realize there was something to review. So
you did, and I didn't do a clear enough job. And I want to make sure that people get a chance to comment on this.
Glenn, are there changes in this document versus when you were hired?
Yes, and part of it is we started as a starting point where Sarah Carroll left off in 2017. And the only job descriptions that have been finalized have been the new hires. So they've been the facilities and technology hire and the news director hire. Those are the only two. So now this is another position. And then the other ones still go back to the suggestions from 2017. So the staff started with the suggestions from 2017, and we made some substantial tweaks in terms of adding some responsibilities and stuff, and cleaned up a little bit of the language. But I think it's a very good job description. So if you take a look at it and see if you have any questions or comments, do it in a suggesting mode, please. Once it's turned into, Dave, you'll turn it into a Google Doc?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll share it in the suggesting mode. So
I actually had it as a Google Doc, and I was trying to figure out how to move. The drive wouldn't allow me to move it from
I understand.
the staff folder to the shared staff and drive. So I created an RTF. That's the only way I could figure to upload it to the board.
If you share it with me personally, then I will put it into the folder and turn it into suggestion mode and invite people to make comments. And then I'd like comments back by a week from now, which would be Wednesday, the 27th.
And just so you know, when you go to it may come up as editing. You have to click on that to get to suggesting. Otherwise, your changes will become automatic. And we want to talk about any changes before they're made automatic.
Correct.
So.
But I think if I convert it to suggesting and then share it, that's what gets shared. So I've had this problem before.
And when actually it looks to me like you can open the doc, you can open it as a Google Doc.
Right. But I want to open it as a Google Doc and put it in suggestion mode and then share it that way. So
can you do it from what you have, or do I need to send you something else?
I'll try it from what I have. I'm not going to try to do it now during the meeting.
Let me know if you need
I will.
Me to send it or share it with you somehow.
Sure.
Thank you.
And one note about opening as Google Docs, that just makes it a Google Doc local on your computer. That's not a shared Google Doc with everybody else, which is what Dave would be creating.
Right.
Okay.
And a lot of people get confused by that because then other people don't see the changes you make because you're doing it on a personal copy of it.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't understand that either.
That's okay.
Dave,
We'll get this figured out.
Are you still, are you still looking for volunteers for the hiring
Yes.
committee?
Yes, we are.
We will start that process. Oh, yes, for the board members, two board members and 2 volunteers.
Okay, I'll volunteer to, I did such a good job with hiring Shali, I think, you know.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Thank you, Stu.
and we need 1 more board member.
I think Gilman raised his hand.
Okay.
And in terms of volunteers, I tell you, man, Kristen Knutson was great on that hiring committee. You know, maybe it was because of his interest in the news department, but he was a really incredibly useful volunteer on that committee.
Well, we'll put it out to the volunteers and see who applies, and we'll discuss it among staff and make a recommendation similar as Molly did for the news director hire.
Megan, were you on that committee?
I was not, no.
Okay, okay.
It was a woman from Perpetual Notion Machine. I'm just blanking her name right this moment.
Okay.
Thanks for volunteering, Gil and Stu.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so let me go back to my action items. I don't know if the board needs to officially task the personnel committee with updating the hiring guidelines to be ready for board approval at the February 17th meeting.
It wouldn't be a bad idea just to you know, make it part of their noted work plan.
As one of the members of the personnel committee, I have understood that this, and I don't think the board needs to say, yes, we understand.
Okay.
So, right, Marla and Gil?
Yeah, I agree. We're on it.
Okay, and then I have sent a red line document out. I suggest that we try and schedule a meeting as quickly as possible. One of the things the staff have gone through and made suggestions, that's why it's a red line document Doug created a while ago. And maybe the first round we could do is to just review the staff comments and maybe accept or reject or modify those comments, and then go over again individually and make our own committee suggestions. I'm willing to work with you guys if you'd like me to, so that we can get this done in the next month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll make sure that we have that and get that ready, and we'll be in contact with you, Doug, with you, Glenn, sorry.
Okay, yeah, just let me know when you'd like to meet. And then the last item, I think we've already taken care of, it was the elections committee. So we get started on the special election for the voting list for 2021. And so it looks like it's Doug and Alita and I, if the board's confirmed that as the elections committee for this year.
Where did we do that?
It was a discussion earlier about the policy on committees. So I just wanted to confirm.
Okay, but I
that
didn't
that's the case.
capture that in the minutes, and I want to capture that in the minutes.
If there are other board members that are hot to trot to be on the election committee, then we would need to go back and modify the number of people that can serve on the election committee in the policy on bylaws, or policy and committees rather. Because right now it says 3 people. So Doug and Alita and I would be 3.
It says 3, it says, excuse me, it says no less than 3 and up to 5 or something like that, Glenn.
Okay, we didn't have to change the number of that, but I know you had suggested that. I don't know. So I guess
Well, that's how it was in the last one, so.
Wait a minute, I seem to remember that being ratified before, now that you mentioned that, Marla. I
Yes.
remember that language.
Yes.
Glenn, I think you're looking at an old one.
No, I took the one off the board site.
Yeah, and that's probably a very old one.
Well, that's where I knew where to find it. So,
Well, that's not necessarily the last one that was passed by the board, though.
Doesn't matter. We got 3 volunteers. We're in compliance.
okay, great.
Doug,
We'll
Alita,
take the
and Glenn.
committee in the future if you want to.
Okay. Very good.
I think that I somehow lost my link to my my board report. I can't look at it right now. So if you can just confirm those were all my action items.
They were.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to be rushing this. Megan, did DEI do anything? I don't see a report, but I could have missed it.
I did put it in the drive, but failed to send it out to everybody on Friday. But yeah, I'd like to just give a brief.
I'd love
report
that.
if there's time. Yeah, so we met on the 13th of January. I think last time I gave a report, talked a little bit about how we were getting under some underlying questions with Dan Lippert as our facilitator on crafting a logic model to help guide us through this work and visualize it. We got through a rough sketch of that over that next month, and now we're kind of taking a step kind of back in terms of like, you know, having another sort of 1,000-foot view on things and looking at some of our definitions and underlying assumptions, and working through comparing different logic models to the working one that we have sketched out, and yeah, going from there. So we kind of breezed through a bunch of that sort of work, and now we're taking it slowly and fleshing it out more, looking at yeah, comparing WORT to other logic models, and then looking at sort of the underlying assumptions and situations. And yeah, it's going well. We're working out our workflow, and if there's anything else that other DEI group members feel like I left out, please hop in.
Okay, I'm confused.
Quick summary.
I'm not finding it in the drive.
In the drive, okay.
Yeah, neither am I.
Should be.
I mean, I'm in the January board packet and I'm not finding it.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Oh, okay, I apologize. I must have dropped
okay.
it in the wrong. Folder. Let me.
I think going on what Megan was talking about,
I'll share in the
our
chat.
final sort of mission is to come up with a mission statement and a vision statement for why DEI exists, right?
Mhm.
So we're trying to flesh out like what we would like to see eventually.
Yeah.
And what the end result is. And it's not a quick process. It's a very long sort of process. Where we're trying to come through like how like a functioning entity that includes everybody. What does it look like, right? And what do we like about what happens at WORT? But what do we not like about what doesn't work? And that takes a lot of like introspection and steps, right? So I think in the end, we're going to figure out like for diversity, equity, and inclusion, what our mission looks like. Because you have to understand, like, if somebody is not buying into that mission, like earlier we were talking about there's something missing, right? There's something missing. So how do we know that that something is missing? So we're working on that. It's a process. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be a fast process. We're like taking everything, we're collecting everything we know and going to the next thing that we're like hoping for, right? It's a good process, but it's rough. It's a rough process. It's not easy.
Yeah, thank you, Alita. Thanks for giving that wonderful summary of like why we're even here doing this, and I'm getting into the nitty gritty. But yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate that.
And Megan has
Thank you.
put it into the folder now. So
Thanks, Megan.
we can review that after the meeting, and that's okay. Life is like that.
And if you want any like feedback about the process or whatever, you can reach out to any one of us and we'll kind of like talk you through it. it's a little bit confusing, and we get into arguments, and I think collaboration and changing your vision is not always a wonderful, safe process. Like, right? We fight, we misunderstand, and then we have to like put parameters out there and be like, hey, like this is not some loving, like, let's hug it out. It's all of us like trying to figure out where we all fit in. Inclusive. I hate the word tolerance, because if I tolerate you, it's problematic, right? I want to accept you and like recognize where you come from and have a piece of you be a part of this. So it's hard work. We're doing it.
I also appreciated when you brought up at the DEI meeting, Alita, that conflict is generative, that it's important. It's it's for change.
Conflict is because when you're working on under this paradigm of like white supremacy, like when somebody brings in like, hey, like Stu knows all about this. Like I brought your name up, Stu, in the meeting. Assumptions that we come under, right? When I first sat on the board, I remember Stu said to me, well, I'm a curmudgeon. I'm like an old white dude. And I was like, dude, I didn't sit at the table and say that. I was like, you said that, right? I sat here to see where I could fit in, right? I'm not a workhorse. I'm not a mule. I'm not going to carry like certain kind of work, but I have something to say. So is that okay? Right? Like we have to change the paradigm and the shift that we look through, right? And see how people are valuable. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're coming from. So it's a whole shift, a mindset, a lens we're like looking through. It's beautiful. It's challenging.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. Yeah, it's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a very nice report.
I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I have no new business. I don't think we have a need for a closed session at this time. Let me know, anybody, if we should discuss something in closed session or if there's any new business. Going once, going twice.
Oh, can I ask one question?
Yes.
You almost got away with closing it out.
I know, damn it.
Is there anything that the board needs to do to move ahead with Suzanne's hiring, or is that totally staff?
Staffed.
It's a part-time position. It's on staff to do that, and we've already formulated a
Yeah,
hiring
we
committee.
talked about it before you joined, actually.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I would like, as the person that has the number one amount of things that go through that committee, I would like to be on the hiring committee. I have more
Fantastic.
stuff that interacts with the bookkeeper than anyone else on our staff.
I totally agree. I think that would be fantastic, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have only one other thing to say if you have it open for new business.
Yes, we do.
So this is the beginning of the year. I'm just announcing now that I am not going to run for continuing to be on the board at the next election. So my seat will be open.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up, Gil. And first, thank you so much for all the work that you've done on the board. And secondly,
I hope to continue
who are
doing
the other
work for the next
two?
6 months anyway.
But who are the other two? Because we really should, like, if you could, if the other two who are up for re-election in June, if you could state your intention for the elections committee, because, it'll just help with us preparing. I don't know offhand.
You don't know who the other two are?
I'm pretty sure
I think
I'm
I'm one of
It's on the
them.
website.
Yeah, Kurt says he's one.
and I think I'm one as well.
Okay,
Yes. And I would like to continue on the board.
all right. And Eric, do you intend to rerun?
I'm somewhat undecided. I've kind of felt like I have not been doing a great job on the board, particularly the last 4 or 5 months. And I think it's going to depend on what the next couple months look like for me.
No, and that's totally fine. You know,
'cause I haven't been doing as much committee work and stuff as I should be doing. And if I'm going to run again, I need to be having that time to be doing everything board members should be doing.
sure. And there's certainly plenty of time for you to make that decision.
And remember, y'all, we're in a global pandemic, and I know Stu is like a workhorse, right? Like, don't use him as like the bar, because he's always like doing all kind of shit. But like, I don't use Stu as a bar. I'm just saying, I'm not a lawyer and shit. I'm just trying to do the best I can do. So just because you are trying to do the best you can do, your voice is valuable.
Thank you, Alita. The other thing I wanted to say is if there's anyone who is thinking about leaving their term early, that would be good to know as soon as possible too, so we know how many seats are open when we start putting out the announcements and the call for applications.
Yeah, I'm not leaving early. I'm just announcing for June.
Okay.
Okay, good.
I think we identified.
Gilman, you cannot leave. We're gonna drag you. You cannot leave. God damn it, no.
So Gil, you're a participating member, and Kurt, you're a.
Yeah, and I will continue to be a participating member, okay?
Right, but I'm saying
And
your
a
seat,
volunteer, just not on the board.
your seat is a participating member seat. Kurt, yours is a listener sponsor seat, correct?
Right.
Okay, and Eric, was yours a participating member seat?
I believe it's participating member. I'm
I
like
kind of think
99%.
it was because you were the volunteer receptionist, so, okay, thank you. I'll check those two to make sure, but I just wanted to get a
Yeah, I think I was.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
now that I'm remembering it.
They're correctly listed on the website.
I think we need new blood, that's all.
I can arrange for a transfusion if you want, so.
Oh Lord. So where can we find this new blood? Y'all, can I tell you, like, as a Black woman, y'all expect a fucking lot, right? Like, this whole thing is like, it's a lot. Like, being Black in America, like, takes so much of, like, my heart and my soul, and I'm a teacher. Like, it's a lot. Like, being a part of this board, I never knew being a part of a board, because I've never been a part of a board, because nobody ever invited me. I never won shit. I'm just going to tell you, this is a lot. I'm just saying, God damn, like, really? This
So,
is
Alita,
like,
I come in and like Stu is like a lawyer and he's like coming up with stuff, and then like, you know, I got Eric and he's like, it's super intimidating. I'm not gonna leave. I'm not gonna leave because y'all don't scare me. But I'm saying this is a lot. So as a Black woman, like coming in and be like, hey, I'm just saying, really?
what you're talking about is a really important thing for us to recognize as a WORT board.
And I'm smart.
And
I'm tired.
When my daughter was in kindergarten and first grade, we were on the parent-teacher organization at her school.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we were wondering is how do we get minority people to come to PTO meetings? And we tried free food and we tried free childcare. And finally somebody clued us in to say, you know, I work 2.5 jobs. It doesn't matter if you got childcare. It doesn't matter if you got food. Get somebody to fill my position at whatchamacallit, you know.
Do you understand when I moved to Madison, just to make up for the salary difference, I worked 5 jobs. 5. 5. You
So-
understand that? And people were like, well, why don't you like go do, I'm tired, motherfucker. I'm tired.
Right.
And so I've like, even with the pandemic, like I'm trying to get unemployment and like, I'm about to lose my car next month, right? It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to get another one. But this shit is really hard for people who are disenfranchised. And I'm going to tell you, like, it's problematic. Like, if you expect people to come in and tell you like what they're going through and you invite them in, it's super difficult, right? Especially when people are like, well, I don't know where I fit in. I'm not quite like, I don't like half the shit Stu talks about. Like, you can't like the emotion. I don't know shit about that. I'm like, oh, okay.
If it makes you feel
Okay.
better, I've been on this board for even longer, and I am a lawyer, and I still feel like I'm playing
Right, you don't know what the fuck people are talking about, right? And you're a lawyer, right? Like half the time I'm like, really? Like y'all send me emails. Like I get multiple emails from teaching. Like my kids send me emails from teaching, and I'm like, oh my God, really? And then somebody is like, and then Dave sends me like, Alita, you need to vote. And I'm like, oh shit, fuck. Okay, my bad. And then he calls me, he's like, are you okay? Do you need gummy bears? I'm like, oh no, like I'm fucking dying over here. Right, we're in a global pandemic. So hello, I don't have, listen, my parents both died before I was 4. I'm an orphan from Milwaukee. There's no reason why I should be here. 53206, that's where I come from, right? And just me like being with all of y'all who are like, oh, I can just put this on like I'm like, really? Like, okay, Doug knows because we'll be like, bitch, please. I'm crazy. Like I do shit that y'all can't do, right? I run classrooms that y'all can't. But I'm like lost sometimes in these meetings, and I'm trying to be like, okay, I got this. Like, I'm trying to be okay. Like, oh, like, really? So I'm going to have to check this email. Do you understand that this shit is super hard?
Mm-hmm.
Not only that,
if you invite Black people in or minorities in, like, I don't even, like, I can't even believe I'm still here on the board. Like, if it was like me 6 months ago, I would have kicked me out. Like, bitch, you didn't do shit. Yeah, okay, because and the global pandemic and like black people dying and people getting COVID. Oh, Jesus.
So one of the questions,
and shit.
One of the questions for DEI is if WORT is going to be representative of the community that we exist in, how do we support people who work 5 jobs? How do we keep
Well, yes.
diverse?
And these are the questions that we're facing, right?
Yes.
These are the things like we're working through these kind of, because voices matter, right?
Yes.
My voice matters. And I have like the ability to say, hey, I can come in and say whatever, right? I can come to WRT and I'm on the board. But what happens to like this little nigga that's over here in school who has something to say? Unless he has me, right? Unless he has me, how does he get in? Right? And I've always been that conduit, right? I've always been that conduit. Like my student today was playing at the inauguration, and I was like, really? Because I'm like backpedaling to like, I remember when you came to my right, and I'll talk to him later because that's a whole nother thing. But like thinking outside the box. Like, how do we get people to come in and kids and people that we love and friends and family who people have given up on, right? how do we get them to come in and have a voice? Because that's what we're asking about, right?
Yep.
That's what we're asking about. People who are disenfranchised, right?
Yep.
Not just like talking about them and taking pictures and shit, but people that you actually make connections with and say, hey, this is Bob. I know him. Like, Bob is not like, you know, I don't know if he's going to come in every Friday, but I'm make sure like I try to get him, right? I'm that conduit. I'm that conduit to the street, you know? And I'm not ever going to leave that because that's my people. And I love that. And that's what we have to bring in. So,
yes.
Yeah.
This is the
I can say that from a staff perspective, one of the things when we looked at the job description for volunteer and outreach coordinator, that position especially is in a prime position to find new sources of outreach in addition to new sources of volunteer recruitment.
But how much does that pay?
That pays $38,000 a year plus like sweet benefits.
Now I make more teaching, boo.
Sure you do, but there's somebody else there that doesn't.
Yes,
and so quite honestly, it's also a position that does not require a lot of prior training except for volunteer management. This is a perfect position for entrance level into volunteer management, and it's got a decent wage and beautiful benefits.
But who do you know that's reliable enough to do that type shit, whose like focus and mission is about that?
Well, that's why in the hiring committee, we really have to take special care to target communities of color so that we get more candidates.
But you don't have connections
for the position.
But you don't have I have connections to people of color who would like love that type shit.
And I will be contacting you.
I know
because I need to use you as that conduit, Alita. We all need to use you as that conduit. And you're not the only conduit at WORT, you know? You're not the only one. And it's nothing to like send forward an email and saying, hey, there's this great job opportunity. We got a lot of people at WORT that have the opportunity to do nothing more than send an email to targeted people of color that they know that would be great for that job. And I think this is a golden opportunity for us to have brand new ways of thinking about outreach, not only to communities of color, but to younger communities using social media, using the platforms that are available, you know, to reach these younger communities as well. So I think we are in a golden opportunity moment here in 2021 to really rethink this position. And we did write a lot of that language in, and I encourage all board members to read the position description and think of maybe even other ways that that language can be worked into that position description so that we really rethink outreach.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, and I'm speaking as business development director, not as staff collective right now, but I feel that is a vital, important thing for Glenn's replacement to really bring to the table their ideas. Rethink the whole thing. You know, we want fresh, we want new viewers. Here's the person that is going to find those bodies, that is going to bring that to the table.
Glenn has done an amazing job. And Glenn has done an amazing job.
Absolutely.
Right?
And this is nothing against Glenn.
No, Glenn has done an amazing
job over the past decades of doing outreach events, making sure that WORT is a name in the community, and making sure that we have great quality people coming in the door. Like I have met so many different people since I've worked at WORT the past 7 years. It is, and I was in community theater for 12 years, and I got to tell you, that's real white compared to WORT. You know, real white compared to WORT. Like, I mean, because I've heard these same conversations over casting. I've heard these same conversations over women directing and writing, and you know, like it's all the same conversation. You know, and I just want to tell you my commitment and the things that the opportunities that we have coming up to really move forward on this, to really move forward on equity and inclusion.
Well, that's about 10,000 watts worth of live discussion there. Thank you very much.
Awesome. It was awesome. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Megan, you were bouncing there. Did you want to say something?
She's on an
no,
exercise ball.
I have a yoga ball.
I can
Helps with-
tell.
It helps with my lymphatic system.
Uh-oh. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
I think we've come to the end of the meeting. Anybody else have anything to add?
This was a good meeting.
It was. Thank you.
I appreciate y'all because I thought it was going to be
Appreciate you too.
but it was like very like, you know, deep and loving and everything that I think about warts, you know. I'm from Milwaukee, so I found this station and everything I think about, like the dreams that I want Wart to be, this meeting makes sense to me. I love y'all.
Love you guys too.
Love you too.
I
Love you.
tolerate all
Yeah.
of you.
I love you.
We're gonna
Tyler.
miss Gil. I don't think Gil's supposed to go. This is a sign you're not supposed to go, Gil.
I love y'all.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Love you too.
I
Love you
need a
guys.
motion.
Good night.
I need a motion to close.
Oh, sorry. I'll motion to close.
Emotioning.
Megan moved. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Take your shit and get the fuck out. Great.
All right. I gotta end
In favor,
here.
say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Good night,
All opposed, say
everyone.
no.
In the
Good
morning.
night.
We are adjourned. Thank you
Good
all.
night. Thank you, Dave.
Night, night.
Bye.